Hi everyone, it's Alan Liang here with episode 2 of the Acquire Movement Podcast. Today's topic is, does your movement support health or sabotage it? So, brief intro on me. I'm a movement instructor based here in Botany, Sydney. I provide group and private training in my studio here, but I also have a program online. Currently, I've got a movement rehab program on School, skool.com/TAYP, Train Away Your Pain. But I will soon have movement enhancement and refinement programs to come as well on a separate account on School. So stay tuned for that. So I teach people how to move, been doing so for the last 10 years, and teach the fundamentals because they're very powerful. And the fundamentals apply across the whole spectrum of movement health. Whether you're very injured, depleted, in acute or chronic pain, you'll need movement to rehabilitate and to restore your foundations. And once you have foundations, then you're going to want to do something with it. Either you have a sport that you really love, an activity that you really want to explore or learn more and develop yourself in, or you have a recreational physical activity that you just love doing. And you may want to enhance your movement to increase your performance. So I offer education and coaching in the fundamentals of movement to enhance performance. Then the third thing is developing practice of refinement so that you have this robust longevity, so that you can be confident in your long-term health as you age. And it's about aging powerfully and gracefully. So movement fundamentals is underneath all of that. Currently, if you want movement rehab, trainawayyourpain.com, and at trainawayyourpain on Instagram. If you want movement enhancement, I offer it at acquiremovement.com or at acquiremovement on Instagram. And if it's martial in nature, go to @move_martial. Currently in the process of building a foot sweeps group. So this is all in person, sadly, but maybe in the future when I develop some kind of a system, maybe I'll put it out online as well. At the moment, it's all about foot sweeps, clinch sparring, stand-up wrestling, stand-up grappling, in a way where we learn through application, we learn through friendly and safe sparring. So lots and lots of exciting stuff to come. I don't know when you'll be hearing this in the future. Maybe it's all out already, but currently that's the state of affairs. Without further ado, does your movement support health or sabotage it? Again, there's 3 major points that I want to make here. The first one is that, again, like I mentioned in previous episode, how do you operate your vehicle? All right, do you crash it all the time? Do you slam the brakes? Do you gun the engine? Do you not take it in for servicing, and you just want to race it all the time? Or do you service your vehicle regularly? Do you keep it in good condition? Do you keep it well oiled, well tuned? And do you take calculated risks when you are racing it, so to speak, when you're actually engaged in sport or physical activity? You don't overdo things. So, excuse me. The way that you move either supports your health or sabotages it. Very, very simply put. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably looking for solutions to pain that you've got, that you've tried everything for, and nothing seems to work or not work long term. And I'm here to tell you that you probably haven't looked into what you're doing wrong with your movement. And I don't blame you. It's not your fault. No one has been taught what to do right and understand what's to do wrong with the body. There's just not that kind of level of physical education within our culture and our education system. It really is up to us to do the research. And unless you're someone like me who's been doing it since as long as I can remember, and have an interest and a gift for it, very, very difficult to actually know what you're doing correctly. And you probably, as a grown adult, you don't have the time and energy to do trial and error. You need to find the right solution, and you need the right solution now or as soon as possible. So I want to talk about 3 points here. Okay, so the first one is what I call neurostructural. You have to have a neurostructural understanding of your body. It's one that's more holistic in understanding the body. It's one that's goes beyond, like, I have pain, I just want it to stop, kill it with painkillers, or it's inflamed, which is causing the pain, just anti-inflame it with drugs. Or I'm going to inject cortisone and then hopefully that goes away, but it doesn't actually solve the root cause. We need to move away from that and understand the body in more holistic and in more in-depth way, but a simple way all the same, so that we don't get overwhelmed and overloaded with information. So that's neurostructural. We've got to understand wear and tear, like the way that we move our body, how it actually leads to us putting pressure in the wrong places because it's not designed to move in a certain way, and how that leads to chronic pain or sometimes even acute injury, which then can lead to chronic pain. And also the effect of lack of movement, so stagnation. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about the effects of stagnation, how important it is to move, and what you could be doing starting today and consistently and long term, so that you can stave off the impact of stagnation. So firstly, let's go to the first point. Neurostructural. So I've basically made this word up because it describes exactly what I need to describe so that I can teach the movement fundamentals. So you might have heard of the term musculoskeletal, which means muscle and bone. You might have heard of the word myofascial, which is muscle and fascia. You might have heard of the word neuromuscular, which is brain and nervous system with the muscle. So it's like a mind-muscle kind of thing. But for me, those labels are just too limited, have been too limited in the scope of what I teach people, which is, to me, really, really essential and very fundamental and very basic. It's because you're sort of stuck looking at two aspects of what I would call the human kinetic tissue. Okay, and I say human kinetic tissue because the human body is comprised of many different kinds of tissue. Like you've got a liver. So liver tissue is very different from your kidney tissue, very different from brain tissue, from lung tissue, etc., etc. Kinetic tissue is the tissue of your body that is primarily designed to store and release kinetic energy. Of course, a liver can store and release kinetic energy, but it's not designed for that. So don't use it for that. don't use it for that. The tissues in your body designed for the storage and release of kinetic energy for movement and motion there's 6 of them. It's your muscle, bone, tendon, ligament, joints, and fascia. Okay? So muscle, bone, tendon, ligaments, joints, and fascia. I usually do it in a different order, but it doesn't matter for now. Those are your 6 main kinetic tissue. Now, one of the things that I promote all the time is that what most people are missing are strength practices, integration, and recovery techniques and skills. Integration is what we're looking at here. So there's an integration when it comes to movement of all 6 of these kinetic tissues. It isn't just musculoskeletal, it isn't just myofascial, it isn't just neuromuscular, it isn't just myoarthro or arthro-osteo, it's all of the above. So unfortunately, there's 6 of them. So that's just way too many syllables, right? And then that's not including the neurological, which is the brain and the nervous system link. So that one's not really designed specifically for kinetic storage of and release of energy, but it's extremely important for movement. So let's just include that as like a 7th part, right? So there's like 7 components, main components for human motion. How do you think about it? That's why I came up with the name neurostructural. Within structure, so you got neuro as the last one, and then you got structural, which is all 6 of the kinetic tissue of the body that's designed for storage and release of kinetic energy for human motion. So with that in mind, that gives us a really great conceptual framework to think about how our body is supposed to move. We can't just think about movement as far as muscle contractions, contrary to what you might have been taught in physical education class, contrary to what you might actually learn in a PT certificate, what you might learn in basic anatomy in a uni subject. The muscle is overly emphasized, I think, in the role it's overemphasized in its role in human movement. I'm not saying that it doesn't contribute to it and it doesn't work towards it and it's not a huge component of it, But if you don't include the role of the joints, the role of the alignment of your skeleton, the role of your fascia, right? Fascia is very, very underexplored. And then how it works with your nervous system, right? Like how does intention contribute to good motion? How does your response to pain, like your internal response to pain, I'm not even talking about the actions of that you take yet. I'm just talking about your mind as it processes the pain. All of this stuff is so important, and until you have a framework to think about it, you will never act in the ways that are appropriate. That's why I have this framework of neurostructural, and this term of neurostructural, because that's how I teach movement. And if you've experienced any of my sessions, or if you've experienced, or if you've joined my online program and you've done some of my follow-along routines, you'll get this from how I teach, and I do it intentionally because it's important, and you need to actually find an easy way to sort of juggle all these elements and integrate them. That's so important, integration. Okay, so without that understanding, you are going to move in a way that's probably going to sabotage your health to some degree, and you're essentially going to, hate to put it this way, but if you don't have proper movement, you're probably going to become your own worst enemy eventually. Okay, you don't mean to be. Nevertheless, quite a lot of it is self-inflicted. Of course, there are accidents in there and all that kind of stuff, of course. However, that we still have a response to all those things, and if we don't respond in the right way, we're probably going to inflict more suffering on ourselves. So without proper movement and education with it, then you're probably going to become your own worst enemy, and you're going to sabotage your health rather than support it. Secondly, brings us to wear and tear. So improperly driving a vehicle is going to lead to different stresses and loads put onto parts of the vehicle, the bio-vehicle, your body, that's not designed for pressure and load to be put on that way. Therefore, over time, either it's going to damage and degenerate it, or it will, and even if it doesn't, it will, because it's being loaded that way, there's a potential that it might happen, and the nervous system is afraid that it might, and in that heightened fear state, it will send distress signals, which you will experience and interpret as pain. But these pain signals often are not they're not indicative of damage yet. There's a reason why many people with back pain, they get an MRI, and then there's no structural deformities that could be leading to the amount of back pain that they're experiencing. But there's an accumulation of this sort of like micro damage that hasn't actually led to any real damage yet, that the nervous system is extremely nervous about, and it's trying to let you know ahead of time, but you haven't been listening to its whispers, so it starts to scream. So I'm using all these metaphors. I hope you follow, I hope it makes sense. But the longer you ignore whispers, they'll become screams. So that's why it's really, really important to become proficient in listening to what your nervous system is trying to tell you and understand what it might be saying, so that you give it the right input and the right action and adjustment. Thirdly, a lack of movement will lead to a state of stagnation, where the body is not circulating properly, and when there's lack of circulation, there are a huge amount of flow-on effects that will contribute to a chronic pain state. And just to digress a little bit, just reminds me, when you're in a chronic pain state, it's because you've had, like, if you peel it all the way back, there's probably like the inciting incident. Let's just say that there is an inciting incident. There's like one thing that caused the initial pain. So you had the initial event, okay, and then you had the response to that event, consciously and unconsciously. It leads to a compensation pattern. That compensation pattern leads you to move in an imbalanced way, which leads to a second pain. Okay, so you have a first order pain that leads to a compensation pattern, that then leads to a second order pain that leads to another compensation pattern, and then a third, and then a fourth, and a fifth, and so on. By the time you get to your nth event and nth compensation pattern, you're in this, not only are you in a state of confusion, because you're like, why the hell is everything hurting so badly? You are in an extremely distorted state of perception because of the state of suffering that you're in. Okay? It becomes really, really difficult there. And I have all the empathy in the world when you're there. However, as a professional in this field, as a movement instructor, I would say that the solution is still the same no matter the severity of the suffering, is that you need to get movement instruction. You need to take ownership of the signal that your body's giving you, and you need to take it upon yourself to get the instruction and the guidance that you need to give it the right input. You might not change overnight, and it probably won't, especially if it's been years and decades in the making, but it's going to be the right step forward, and you just keep making those steps. And trust me, I've seen it 1,000 times. You will get out of pain. You will feel like yourself again. You'll be capable and confident, and you'll have so much more fun in your life, and you'll just forget that this whole chapter ever existed. Okay? That's why you need movement instruction. So stagnation is going to cause all these domino effects. That's going to lead to what I was saying before, this first order, second order, third order pains. And that's because there's very little circulation in your system, so you're not healing well, all right? Your lymphatic system is not getting pumped, so you're storing toxins, which then may increase your fat deposits, which then increases your weight, which puts more stress on your joints, which then leads to pain. That's just one example. And you're also not clearing the joint with movement, because movement is the pump for your joint's health. It helps to flush out inflammation and put in fluid flow that is going to bring in nutrients to nourish the joint, help it to stay healthy, help it to stay smooth, and help it to not be stiff and cause you to lose range of motion, which then leads to feeling restricted. So can you see that there's like a really complex ecology of what's going on here? And that's one of the main reasons why quick fixes have not worked for you. And even if they have, they've stopped working. And it's why traditional therapies tend to fall short, because they're not looking at it from a holistic angle. They tend to be looking at it from an isolated place, and they tend to offer passive treatments. And even if they do offer exercise programs, maybe you don't know how to do it properly with good technique, and then you end up in more trouble and more discouraged. So, there is just actually so many things that can get in the way of you and living the life that you want and just living your best life without pain. That's why I offer what I offer, and it's so comprehensive, because I hope that you understand by now the body is a very complex system. And when we just talk about just the kinetic tissues alone, there's 6 of them plus the brain and nervous system. Okay. However, you don't have to understand how a car works to drive it, right? You just need to understand how to listen to the driving instructor and then learn how to actually operate the vehicle correctly. That's where a guy like me comes in to instruct you in those specific things, to see what you're doing wrong that you might not be aware of and no one's ever told you about, and then teach you the right steps at your pace, given to you at the right time, in the right order, so that you can adopt the skills that you can essentially keep for life. So that's episode 3. Does your movement support health or sabotage it? Like I said, the movement fundamentals that I teach can help you to feel like yourself again, because you've rehabilitated yourself through the fundamentals, or it's helped you to enhance your performance, or it's helped you to achieve robust longevity, because you understand how to continually refine your body and your mind through good practices. I'm Alan Liang. Thank you so much for listening once again.